Renault's modern remit is to create more affordable, more sensible vehicles, and nothing the company makes sums this up better than its all-electric Kangoo Z.E van. It costs little more to buy than its diesel-powered stablemate, and from then on, the running cost savings will be huge. Assuming the restricted operating range won't limit you and the compact size suits your needs, this is an LCV that's very difficult to ignore. The motor vehicle is at a turning point. It simply has to evolve, whether you believe in global warming or not, to emit less in cities, to make less noise, and to use increasingly scarce energy more efficiently. More and more electric cars are answering this call, but their environmental impact is likely to be limited until another class of vehicle properly takes up this challenge. I'm talking, of course, of vans. When it comes to toxic emissions in our inner cities, LCVs are arguably the biggest culprits, yet van makers have been slow to get on board the electric bandwagon. Renault, in contrast, has led the way, and done so with the model we're going to look at here, the innovative Kangoo Z.E. Launched late in 2011, this was the market's first affordable all-electric van, the Z.E in its name, highlighting its ability to produce zero tailpipe emissions in everyday use. And though the technology is new, the vehicle it's plumbed into remains the same second-generation Kangoo that's been on sale here since 2007, with levels of space and practicality untroubled by its new electric remit. This is a design that competes in the compact van sector, where in combustion engine form it must battle tough rivals like Ford's Transit Connect, Fiat's Doblo Cargo, Vauxhall's Combo, Nissan's NV200, Volkswagen's Caddy, Peugeot's Partner and Citroen's Berlingo. There's much less competition though if you're looking for a vehicle of this kind with electric propulsion, or at least that's true for the time being. It won't be in the future. Electric vans are here to stay. But could your business justify owning one? Let's find out. So, what's it going to be like to drive? Well, pretty quiet is the answer. Press the throttle pedal and you move off in near silence. So much so that you may find yourself startling dozy pedestrians and in need of the optional audio warning system that would alert them to your presence. And that could come in rather useful, for you'll be coming upon them rather quickly thanks to the fact that 100% of this Kangoo's 226 Newton meters of torque is generated from standstill. Once underway, it is true that because of the heavy 260 kilogram weight of all those batteries, power surge does drop off rather dramatically from 30 miles an hour onwards, resulting in a total 0 to 60 mile an hour time of nearly 22 seconds. But how often, if you're an urban-based business, are you actually going to be travelling at or around 60 miles an hour? Exactly. At more likely delivery speeds, the 44 kilowatt electric motor, which puts out the equivalent of 60 brake horsepower, feels crisp and remarkably responsive. And of course, like all electric vehicles, you've the equivalent of an automatic gearbox, so there are no gear changes to worry about. It's exactly the same mechanical setup as you'll find in Renault's mid-range Fluence Z.E electric car. And as with that model, there's just one issue that will dominate your thinking in day-to-day use of this vehicle, that of operating range. Renault says that won't be a problem, quoting research suggesting that over 70% of van drivers cover a daily distance of less than 62 miles. On that basis, this Kangoo Z.E's quoted operating range of 106 miles between recharge fill-ups ought to be quite sufficient, or at least it would be if it was achievable. Renault themselves admit that things like extreme weather conditions, coupled with sporty driving, hilly routes, and liberal use of the heating and air conditioning systems will decrease operating range to as little as 50 miles. For myself, I found that the actual operating range in normal use is somewhere between these two extremes, and as long as you plan around that, then it doesn't tend to be a problem. Interestingly, what won't reduce your range is urban traffic. Unlike internal combustion engine vehicles, electric models are at their most efficient in built-up areas and snarled-up traffic jams. After all, when you're stuck in a queue or stationary at the lights, the electric motor isn't using any energy. Actually, it's quite the opposite, because the systems that run and power this vehicle are programmed to recover energy under deceleration. You can actually increase your range in town conditions because you'll be doing a lot more braking and stopping. So the actual operating range of this Kangoo, if you're urban based, can actually increase if you're dropping off stuff around town to as much as 125 miles. Of course, it'll be up to the driver to play his or her part in maximising the operating range of the vehicle. If you thrash the thing up and down the road all the time, don't be surprised to find the battery charge indicator on the dash dropping at an alarming rate. Now, you'll find this charge indicator to the left of the speedometer and the instrument cluster here. To the right of the speedo is what Renault calls an econometer, there to show you how efficiently you're using the charge that you have available. If the vehicle is operating normally, then the needle will be pointing straight ahead in the 12 o'clock position in a light blue segment of the dial, showing you that all is normal. If you can get it to the left-hand side of the dial in the darker blue segments, then you'll have the peace of mind of knowing that you're increasing your operating range. That'll generally be when you're cruising or when you're braking. If, on the other hand, you're accelerating quite heavily, the needle will move to the right into the red segments, and at that point your battery charge will be ebbing away. For me, though, the more important readout is that in the digital display at the bottom of the speedo that shows your remaining range in miles and the battery's remaining capacity in kilowatts, as well as average and instantaneous energy consumption. Now, you can improve those readouts by making liberal use of the eco mode, activated by this button down here that restricts both the power and the torque elements of the electric motor by about 10%. I can't really see why you'd ever turn it off. When you do need to charge up, then you've got various options. If you're fortunate enough to be near a so-called fast charging point, say at a Renault Z.E dealer for example, then you can charge up the battery from empty to about 80% of capacity in just 30 minutes. But you're far more likely to be near a standard public or work-based charge-up point, or indeed the so-called wall box that Renault suggests you get installed, either at home or at your place of work, or wherever the vehicle is most likely to be garaged. Now, charging from empty to full capacity from one of these will take between 6 to 8 hours. But bear in mind that you don't always have to charge completely. You can just top up the vehicle whenever you're able to, say when you're in a business meeting or when you're stopping to do some shopping. Now, there are over 50,000 standard public charging points in operation across Western Europe, with over 240 new ones being added to that total every day. To find where your nearest one is, there are plenty of eco-motoring websites. This is my nearest charging point. To get your vehicle on charge at one of these points, you'll need to buy a smart card from your local council, something like this. Now, these cost around about £50 depending on what part of the country that you're in, and that's a figure that should cover the electricity you'll be using. You simply take your card, swipe it, and then when the indicator authenticates you, you can then plug in and then get ready to charge up. If all else fails and the only thing you can connect to is a standard 3-pin plug from a normal 240 volt domestic supply, then that's no problem, provided you don't do it too often. Bear in mind though that charging from empty here to full takes 10 to 12 hours, but a part charge can often be quite sufficient. Say you were dining with friends and while you were there you rather cheekily plugged into the outdoor power point in their garage. If you were having a dinner of say 3 hours, by the time you came out your vehicle would have probably been charged for a further sort of 25 miles, which is going to be easily enough in most cases to get you home. A few other things that you might wonder about, I certainly did. No, you don't get charge leakage, so you won't come back from holiday to find your vehicle with a flat battery. No, you can't drive off inadvertently with the charge leads attached. The vehicle won't power up. And as I said, you don't have to completely power the battery down to flat before you can charge it again. Overall, well, I know electric motoring can sound a bit complicated, but you very soon learn to adapt and start treating this little van just as you would any other. It's quite easy to do, for it drives just like any other normal internal combustion engine Kangoo. No, scratch that, it actually drives better because of the way that the battery's located centrally underneath the vehicle. So all that weight just in the right place gives the van a lower centre of gravity, and that makes this Kangoo a little more eager to turn into tight corners. More noticeable than that, though, is the engine braking that you get as the kinetic energy is recovered by the motor, which then turns itself into electrical current, which then charges the battery. Now, this can be so pronounced it actually triggers the brake lights, and as a user you quickly adjust to the fact that you don't actually need to use the brake pedal very much unless you're actually coming to a stop. The powertrain for this Kangoo Z.E may be as different as you could possibly imagine from that of an ordinary combustion engine version, but you wouldn't know that from a casual glance at this van, whether you've opted for it in 4.2 metre long standard form or in 4.6 metre long maxi guise. Assuming that you haven't noticed the lack of an exhaust pipe at the back, the only external giveaways are the badging and the charging flap at the front. Inside, apart from the conveniently centre console mounted auto gear stick, the cabin is just as you'll find in any of its diesel stablemates. Comfortable, user-friendly and brightly lit thanks to the MPV style forward positioned panoramic windscreen. You sit high up with a wide field of vision from which you view a well thought out dashboard, reconfigured here to include a battery charge indicator on one side of the speedometer and what Renault calls an econometer, by which you can judge the efficiency of your driving, on the other. It's a practical cabin too, with an enormous amount of headroom, ensuring that all kinds of elaborate headgear could be accommodated should the occasion arise. There's no optional middle seat of the kind that some compact vans offer. Renault thinks that isn't necessary thanks to the availability of a crew van derivative with a fold-out three-person rear bench. But the space that you do get around each of the two seats on offer is more than adequate. The only issue, I guess, would be for really long-legged passengers, thanks to this sloping floor. As far as storage and usability in the cab are concerned, there are large door pockets, a 15-litre lidded glove box, an A4 clipboard-sized compartment at the top of the dash, complete with pen holders, and a 13-litre overhead shelf. You also get a 12-volt power point, a tray for loose change, and a couple of cup holders between the front seats. Along with the multimedia and Bluetooth connectivity that's available, it means that your Kangoo could very easily double as a travelling office. Now, keeping that office snug is a clever pre-start system. It's possible to program the preheating and pre-cooling of the cabin when the vehicle is plugged in, so that when you get in, the temperature is comfortable and you don't then need to stretch either the air conditioning or the heating to a point that would then damage your operating range. List pricing is where most all-electric vehicles usually fall down. They usually only make sense with the asking price spread over a long lease, but refreshingly things are rather different here. At first glance, the asking figures in the £17,000 to £19,000 bracket, excluding the VAT, they look quite high, but that's before you take into account the government's plug-in van grant, which lops fully £4,000 off the asking price, and the resulting £13,000 to £15,000 price bracket means that this all-electric vehicle is hardly any more expensive than its ordinary combustion engine counterparts. Renault expects fully 80% of Kangoo Z.E models to end up on fleets, with the remaining 20% going to small operators like florists and couriers. As in the standard Kangoo range, buyers have a choice of either the ordinary 4.2 metre long variant that I have here, or for a premium of around £1,000, a 4.6 metre long maxi model, which for a further £700 can also be ordered in fully glazed crew van form that includes a fold-out 3-person split-folding rear bench. Now, you could use that particular model as an affordable little family MPV runabout were you to be so minded. As for rivals, well, Peugeot's electrically propelled partner van was the first segment competitor to be launched against this Renault, but it certainly won't be the last. Whichever Kangoo Z.E variant you choose, bear in mind that simply buying it won't be the end of your outlay, for Renault has separated vehicle and battery ownership. So once you've decided whether to purchase or to lease this van, you've then got to take out a monthly subscription for the battery that will power it. The extent of that will depend on the ownership term you choose and your annual mileage. The ownership term can be anything between 1 and 5 years, and the annual mileage anything between 6 and 15,000 miles per annum. Depending on the combination you choose, you're looking at a monthly fee of, from around £60 to just over £100, but you need to talk to your dealer about specifics on that. Now, this won't be just any Renault dealer, it'll need to be one of a network of Renault Z.E specialists, and there aren't too many of those. There were only just over 20 at the time of this vehicle's launch, so you need to make sure that you're close enough to a specialist for that not to be a problem. As long as that's not an issue and you've sorted out your monthly battery subscription, then you'll have the peace of mind of knowing that the subscription guarantees you a battery that'll always charge at least 75% of the original capacity. Batteries deteriorate over time, you see. And you'll also have the knowledge of comprehensive roadside assistance. Should you find yourself one day stranded with a flat battery by the roadside, the recovery team will come out and tow you to the nearest charging point. And talking of charging points, on top of the purchase price and the battery subscription, you'll also need to budget for one of those, since Renault frowns on operators using a 3-pin plug supply on a regular basis, even if that were to be business practical. The French brand works with British Gas for the installation of such a charging point, either at your home or your place of business, and the cost will be around £800, excluding the VAT. Now, the cable that you'll use in such a charging point will of course be supplied with the vehicle, but if you want a lead that will occasionally at least enable you to charge off a normal 3-pin 220 volt home supply, then you'll need to buy such a thing from your dealer, like this one. Whichever Kangoo Z.E model you choose, you also get a decent level of standard equipment with features like fingertip remote control for the CD stereo. You also get remote control central locking, able to lock or unlock the rear door separately, and the locking system automatically activates as you drive the vehicle away. A possibly useful option is the in-cab heater. It's a 5 kilowatt diesel fuel powered affair that is able to heat the cabin without exhausting the battery life. Now, it's got a 13 litre fuel tank that you fill via the same filler cap that would be used by the ordinary combustion engine diesel version. And while we're talking options, you may also want to consider the My Z.E Connect Pack, which will enable you to check your vehicle's battery charge and range status remotely via either a smartphone or a computer. Now, other options are more familiar, things like cruise control, a speed limiter, auto headlamps and wipers, and rear parking sensors. Safety equipment includes ABS braking with brake assist for emergency stops and pre-tensioner seat belts. A driver's airbag is the only bag you get as standard, but on the options list you will find a passenger airbag and a driver's lateral bag. The first thing that you need to know here is that building in the electric propulsion system has had no impact at all on carriage capacity, all of the batteries and so on being housed out of the way under the floor. So the dimensions and the carrying capacity of this vehicle is exactly the same as you'd find in the normal internal combustion engine version. In the standard version, that's the one I've got here, that means an overall length of 4.2 meters, which means that when you open the asymmetrically split rear doors, you'll find a total cargo volume, or anything between 3 and 3.5 cubic meters. It's been sensibly ply-lined out to avoid scuffs and scrapes in this particular version. Now, between the wheel arches, there's 1.21 meters of total width, and that means that there's easily enough space for a standard Euro pallet. In terms of cabin length, well, there can be as much as 2.5 meters, but that's assuming that you've got and you're using this very neatly designed fold flat front passenger seat. Now, you can get even more benefit from this fold flat seat if you go for the bigger 4.6 meter long maxi version of this Kangoo, which offers a 2.9 meter total loading length with the seat flat here, and also a 4.6 cubic meter total loading volume. The payload capacity remains the same though. Now, if you do go for the maxi version of this Kangoo, then you can also order it in crew van form, which will give you a fold-out 3-person split-folding rear bench. Even with that bench in place and 4 passengers on board, you'll still be able to fit 2.4 cubic meters of loading volume behind them. And at the times when you're not using the rear bench and you can fold it flat into the floor, then you'll have up to 3.6 cubic meters of volume to play with. Okay, got that? What else might you need to know? Well, there are 4 floor-mounted tie-down hooks with the option of more at waist height, but should you forget to use them and everything moves forward, then you'll be thankful of the fact that there's a proper full steel bulkhead provided as standard equipment. It's worth paying a little extra for the plastic mouldings that up to half height guard the cargo bay from scratches and scuffs, or even better, going for a full ply lining kit like I've got here. And talking of options, plumbers and window cleaners will want to tick the box for the rear roof flap, out of which long items like ladders and pipes can be poked. As for running costs, well, you won't need me to tell you that this is a very efficient vehicle indeed, much more so than one with an internal combustion engine, as an electric motor like this one has an efficiency rating of fully 90%. Now, to put that into perspective, a internal combustion engine, a petrol model, has an efficiency rating of just 25%. So that means that for every 10 kilowatts of energy, 9 kilowatts is actually making its way onto the tarmac with an electric model like this, as opposed to just 2.5 kilowatts of energy with a petrol engine under the bonnet. So more grunt is getting to the tarmac. And the energy to drive this powertrain will cost you less too. Depending on how you calculate it and on the price that you're paying for your electricity, plugging in this Kangoo will be 5 to 10 times cheaper than pouring diesel into it. The advantage of having your own wall box charging point is that you can choose to charge on low-cost off-peak electricity. But even if you can't always do that, it should on average cost you no more than around £3 to fully charge this Renault from empty on a day-to-day basis. Further good news comes in exemption from the London congestion charge, and of course electric vehicles have long been exempt from company car tax. Now that means that company drivers pay 0% benefit in kind tax if they're running an electric vehicle. Electric vans also gain from van benefit charge exemption, plus the introduction of a 100% first year allowance for companies purchasing electric vans, which enables them to offset the cost of buying this Renault against corporation tax in the first year of ownership. Finally, maintenance costs via a special programmed maintenance program will be about 20% less than they would be for a diesel Kangoo. There's no timing belt to change, for example, no air filter, no fuel filter, and of course no oil changes will be needed. Servicing intervals rise from 18,000 miles on a normal DCI Kangoo to 25,000 miles on this vehicle, though you will need to bear in mind that there is an initial servicing check required at 12,500 miles or 1 year to check that everything's as it should be. Standard is a 3-year 100,000 mile warranty, and there's a 5-year 100,000 mile warranty applicable to the electric drivetrain. There's a 3-year paint warranty and a 12-year anti-perforation warranty. So, what do we have here? An electric van that's no longer virtual but reality. Simple yet highly technologically advanced and incredibly eco-friendly. This 100% electric Renault lets your business take a different route, lowering your overheads and showing your clients that you're fully committed to doing the really responsible thing and doing it right. The adoption of electric power across the automotive spectrum is only going to have a significant environmental effect if it's also adopted by the van segment, and in blazing a trail here, Renault should be applauded. With government assistance, this vehicle costs little more than a diesel alternative, which in comparison is thirsty, dirty and smelly. So, if you need a vehicle of this kind, if you're after a compact van and like most businesses today you've one eye on the bottom line, why wouldn't you buy one of these? Answers on a postcard please.